Hey guys, welcome back to another Path of Exile 2 video, and today we'll take a look at an updated freeze build for the Sorceress. Yes, it actually still works despite the recent cast on freeze nerfs, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make up for that, what new skills to implement, and even more so how to make the most out of it. Now this build is still going to continue to use the cast on freeze. It's actually still useful even though it occurs about 90% less often. But it's still a very powerful spike in damage, and we're gonna make use of another ability to actually increase the number of auto cast comets. In this case, we're going to also implement the elemental invocation, very similar to the cast on abilities, except that in this one you decide when you want to unleash it, and second of all, you can also cast it before 100% fill on it. So let me just tell you, first of all, the energy gains are a bit better in this case compared to the cast on. As you can see, cast on freeze gives only 10 energy per power of the enemy you freeze, but in the case of the elemental invocation we gain 12 energy, and it's also like 2 levels lower than my cast on freeze. So obviously if we were to upgrade this, it would be even better. In this slot, we're going to put comets and also a spell echo. You can interchange spell echo to whichever one of these you want. But the gist of it is that because we get to bank elemental invocation, we also get to choose when to unleash it. It's going to be pretty much an instant cast. So the way I like using it, I just pay attention to when cast on freeze triggers so that I don't have to worry about looking at the bottom. So when all of the cast on freezes unleash, I know that I already generated at least as much energy needed to also unleash an elemental invocation. So when I have the first 2 comets from cast on freeze, I know I can unleash the third one via that elemental invocation. That is basically your trigger. And against bosses, like I said, that freeze build-up is very good. You gain 12 energy in this case, which is very strong. Plus, you have baked-in bonuses for elemental invocation, 33 increased energy gain, which is just amazing. Now, in between this, you're obviously going to use these 3 main spells right here. Frostbolt as filler, Frostbomb as one of your primary highest damage dealers, and then Frost Wall to basically deal, well, not really deal, but like build up a ton of frost build up and also have a lot of damage explosions. But Frost Wall is the better one over here, obviously, because we get to use Spell Cascade and also Icicle. So Spell Cascade is just going to make it unleash even more walls basically in the same area of effect. So if you place down a wall, it's going to do that Spell Cascade and you're going to see even more walls emerging. This is going to be amazing against bosses or bigger groups of enemies because they all bump into it, they all get stuck into it. So if they get destroyed either by you or by them, they also get all of that damage against them plus a 50% more freeze buildup. And we also use Icicle plus another passive in the skill tree to reduce the health of the Icicles by 50% here and another 60% from the skill tree. It's still a high number, by the way, but it's very, very manageable. Besides this, Frost Bomb is going to be your next best thing. Spam this as often as possible. Very high damage from the get-go. We use this with the magnifying effect so that it covers more area, and strip away so that it also has like a better effect. In this case, it's going to also help with the freeze build-up. Frostbolt, just like before, it's just a filler, so you're going to constantly spam this with the scatter shot, with the glaciation so that you do even more freeze build-up, and finally with arcane tempo so that you have more cast speed. Other filler abilities over here that you can go ahead and use are hyperthermia. You can debuff enemies' cold resistances. I highly recommend doing so. You can increase the effect with a heightened curse and really make it pop to like 49%, give or take, basically with the cold resistance and the heightened curse. And you can also use persistence, just make it last for longer, helps a ton in fight situations. And cold snap, I still retain this from early stages just because it's so good at popping enemies damage. So if you already frozen them, you can pop off the cold snap on all of them and just unleash a huge amount of radius damage explosion. It's a small radius, but it's very good. So let's go over the skill tree itself. Now the skill tree over here focuses a lot on 3 things. First of all, shield regen and shield regeneration. Second of all, a lot of mana regeneration because you're going to consume a ton of it. And third of all, obviously, frost buildup and frost damage, basically. So this is why we're gonna go with this version of the build right here. You can see that we have a lot of max energy shield. I have 1,000, almost 1,200 basically with it, which helps a ton with survivability. That's why we're going with all of these points right here. Increasing the max energy helps a ton. But some of these nodes like insightfulness also already come with mana regeneration rate baked into it. Even a bit of intelligence, which helps a ton. Some of the first passives that will help over here as well, like Essence Infusion, can also further make the recharge speed on it even faster. But realistically, what you're going to want is damage against enemies affected by elemental ailments, so exploit the elements. We also have a few others right here with overexposure, especially to cold effects. Also like Stormbreaker helps a ton with that. Many abilities over here that just help increase either the damage against exposed enemies or increase exposure itself against them, which is what's going to help you constantly freeze enemies very, very fast. Even up right here, going with Inescapable Cold helps a ton. Glaciation once again and +1 to cold skills will be very, very useful. Everything else, like I said, energy shield, and one thing that we're also using is the Shattered Crystal, another 60% reduction to ice crystal life. So again, this is going to be for that ice wall ability, so that we don't stay there and constantly deal damage to it until it breaks. You can, of course, later on go with other options. There are many more, like Ether Flow is going to help you a ton. In this case, with mana regeneration, another 50% boost to that, since you're moving all the time. So obviously, you're going to have a build down below that will follow all of this. Now, in terms of our ascendancy, I was very tempted with the Tempest Caller. I really enjoy elemental storms, but unfortunately they are quite unreliable, and low level your critical hit will not be that great. So Scouring Winds is the best thing over here. Just exposure in general will help a ton. It's going to further lower resistances by additional 20%, which is very strong. Also going with the Constant Gale, you have Arcane Surge, so that's going to give you more spell speed, also mana regeneration, so you really need as much mana regen as possible. And finally, as we go into like the third and the fourth tiers, eventually we're gonna maybe sacrifice some of this and go for Shaper of Storms, so all our damage hits will also contribute to shock chance, so even our frost skills will deal further shock damage, which is going to help a ton. It's going to increase our damage exponentially as we move into the end game. Now, in terms of items, there are a few things that you're going to want to focus on, specifically if we're talking about weapons, spell damage, cold spell damage, all of that kind of stuff. That's going to be extremely useful and will help a ton. As you can see, we have quite a bit of that with this staff right here that I was lucky to get, but it's not like the best at all. One thing you really want to also look out for is having plus couple of points. If you can get like 3 or 4, that would be amazing, but plus points to level of all spell skills. This is going to give you like one of the highest increases in damage. Just to give you an example, in case of my Frostbolt, just to like show you the difference, normally I would have like 300 damage with a staff that was a bit better than this in terms of the spell damage, but had no points into spell skills. Those 2 extra spell skills pretty much almost double the damage on it. So basically from 300 and a bit to almost 550 plus here. So that is a huge increase. You're constantly going to want to look out for those plus signs. Everything else, you can go ahead and maybe get some spirit as well. You will obviously need spirit over here, like 60 for this, 60 for this, and in the later stages you also need maybe the Arctic armor and maybe put on a clarity. So that's going to be another 40 over there. You're going to want a bit of that as well. Obviously, as you can see, resistances, intelligence, we're also using a lot of that. Basically everything that can keep you alive, sustain you, and also increase your damage. Outside of that, I would say that maybe increase freeze buildup can also help a ton. Maybe even critical hit chance for spells if you really want to go with the spell storms from our specialization, from our ascendancy. If you want to go with that, you can definitely use it. But even without it, critical hit chance can definitely be helpful for this build. For runes, I would recommend Rune of Body. Just increase your maximum HP. It can be very helpful. Maybe even stack a little bit of that extra strength from the skill tree. You can totally do that. And by the way, if you get anything like this, like a Dusk Scar Sapphire, this is going to further give you more hit chance, more energy gain, also increase spell damage. If you can get anything like this, go ahead and also slot it in. This is going to give you everything that you need for your build. I've also slotted in a bit of extra like mana regen, as you can see over here. Even though you are going to have a lot of mana regen, you never have enough of it. You're going to spend so much of it, especially since you're triggering so many of these cast on freezes and elemental invocations. And yeah, that is pretty much it with the build. In terms of how you actually play with it, you're going to go in boss fights and immediately place down all of the ice walls as much as you can. Have them at the enemy's feet at all times so that they walk through it, have the freeze build up and get damaged by the pop-off effect from them, and also make sure that they are in range for a frost bomb and a hyperthermia so that you both debuff their resistances to cold and further provide some extra damage via the frost bomb. And then in a couple of these tries, you should already have like a full-on energy, especially against the boss, to already fully do a cast on freeze and also have elemental invocation, enough energy to cast a third one. That's going to be a huge chunk of damage right off the bat. Against normal enemies, it's the same tactic. Put down walls, keep them at a distance from you, unleash the frost bomb, maybe a bit of hyperthermia if you want to, but basically between all of these comets right here, you're going to just absolutely smash them. And this is pretty much it with the build. Let me know down below what you think of it. Are you still using the class or have you moved on to something else? Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.